What is up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the best budget Samsung smartphones for 2022. These are going to be all $300 and under. So let's go ahead and get started with an older flagship, the Galaxy S10 Plus. Guys, this is still an excellent video. I've made so many comparisons and videos on this phone, and it is just awesome. It definitely stands the test of time, coming in at around flat $300 now, a little bit cheaper honestly if you shop around. But we do have a full premium design, glass back. We also have metal railings, IP68 dust and water resistant on here. It is a very solid feeling phone in the hand. So we do have on here a 6.4-inch dynamic AMOLED display, HDR10 Plus. It is a full 1440p display, 522 for the PPI. Absolutely beautiful display. And honestly, the questions about the double punch hole, you really get used to it after a while. And also, you have a lot of fun with the wallpapers as well too. But just an awesome high quality display here. This will be upgradable to Android 12 as well, or the One UI 4, and it's going to be awesome. So I'll drop videos when that comes out for it. But we do have the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640, and performance on here is still very good. If you guys have watched my channel, you guys can see I put it up against the newest flagships, and it still does a really good job speed wise, gaming wise. Still does an excellent job. So performance wise, it's still going to kill it. You also get micro SD card support, which a lot of newer flagships do not have. 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM. You also have really nice sounding stereo speakers on here, and this phone still retains the headphone jack. All the bells and whistles are there under the display fingerprint sensor, very fast. NFC, Samsung desktop support on here. It really just has all the bells and whistles, reverse wireless charging on here as well too. This one also has pretty good camera setup, a triple camera setup, 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel telephoto, 2x optical zoom, and then a 16 megapixel ultra wide camera with 4K 60 on the front and back. And we do have that dual camera setup up front, 10 megapixel, and then an 8 megapixel wide lens. So overall, the S10 Plus is just really awesome, and this has pretty good battery life still as well at 4100 milliamps. And then we also have 15-watt charging, which is like meh, but overall battery life on this phone is pretty good. So this is overall still an excellent choice, guys. Now next is going to be the Galaxy A32 4G version. I actually really love this version because of the display on here. It has pretty much the same plastic design as the 5G version, but I really just like the specs on this more for the exact same price, honestly. So you do have on here a Super AMOLED 6.4-inch display, 1080p at 90 Hz. That's my favorite thing about this phone, because the 5G version has that TFT display, which is just nowhere near as bright outdoors. It has a pretty sharp PPI 411, so overall the display is one of the things that I really loved about this phone. Android 11 is standard on this phone, so it's gonna get Android 12. We have the Helio G80. It's not a super powerful phone or anything like that. It's really just for your casual use, but I was able to casually play games and stuff like that, no problem. You do have micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM. You also have on here a loud speaker, which sounded pretty decent. The headphone jack is retained on here. We also have NFC. Under the display, fingerprint sensor is also pretty fast on here too. I think the actual highlight with this phone is really the cameras. It's a quad camera setup at 64 megapixels, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, and depth sensor with 1080p video, and then a 20 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 1080p. Guys, the photos on here were definitely really good. It took mid-range quality photos, like you would expect. I thought a little bit above average as well too. So great color, good detail. The macro camera is pretty fun to play with. Overall, I was really happy with the image quality of the cameras here. So we do have on here, which I also think is another highlight, a 5000 milliamp battery. Absolutely crazy battery life for this phone. So you can get very good battery life on this phone, easily a day and a half. So if you're somebody that's worried about battery life, this phone definitely has it. Overall, it's just a pretty solid package. Great cameras, great battery life, and great display. Next is the Galaxy Note 9. These are very cheap, going for around $242. Now you can get the Note 10 I'll leave a link down to that, but those are still trending around 350 bucks, so they're a little more expensive. So that's why I kind of left it off the list. But if you want to just spend that 250 bucks, you can get the Note 9. It's a really good phone, still a flagship quality device, glass and metal design on here, IP68 dust and water resistant, Super AMOLED display, HDR10 with no punch hole at 6.4 inches, full 1440p resolution display on here, 516 for the PPI. Absolutely beautiful display on here, no problems at all. You also have the stylus on here, so if you're in a digital artwork, you like drawing on your phone, or you just need to jot certain stuff down, the Note 9 is definitely going to be very awesome for you. The last update this phone got was Android 10, and it's in a security patch stages now, but it does have the Snapdragon 845 and the Adreno 630. Performance on here is still pretty good. It's still very fast, and also it plays games pretty good as well too. It's pretty much on par. Well, it actually outranks some mid-range chips in Geekbench scores actually, so it's still a pretty powerful phone. You also have the micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on here. Stereo speakers are on board. They sound pretty good, very loud. Headphone jack is on board, NFC, fingerprint scanner, and Samsung desktop support. So all of your features, flagship features that you would want, is still on this device. The cameras on here are pretty good. They've aged pretty well considering that the price that you're going to pay for this phone is a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel telephoto. Also 2x optical zoom with 4K 60 on the front. On the back, excuse me. And then you have an 8 megapixel selfie that shoots in 1440p. So like I said, the images were pretty good. They weren't bad. You can see for yourself. Yeah, the color is a little bit over exaggerated, but overall, I thought the images were still pretty solid on this device, especially if you give it enough light. You also have a 4,000 milliamp battery with wireless charging as well. So this is overall still a solid phone. Battery life is still pretty decent on here. Performance, screen quality is still gorgeous. And then you get the stylus, which you don't have on a lot of phones these days. So definitely check out the Note 9. Now, if you guys are looking for something a bit smaller, the S10e is definitely still a great buy to consider. It's got a aluminum frame, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant. It also has the dynamic AMOLED display at HDR10 plus at 5.8 inches, 1080p 438 for the PPI. Overall, just a beautiful display, and again, very easy to one hand for people with smaller hands. This phone is also upgradable to Android 12 with One UI 4, so that's going to be really nice to have. The Snapdragon 855 is on board here with the Adreno 640 GPU. Basically, still great performer. Check out all the videos that I have on this phone, and you'll see that it does great with gaming. It does great against newer flagships. Overall, still an awesome performer. You also have micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM on here. So again, still very good in that department. We also have stereo speakers, which are definitely above average, especially for the size of this phone. Very crisp and clear speakers. The headphone jack is retained. NFC is on board. The fingerprint scanner is actually side mounted, which is something that I really love, so I'm glad they did that. And you also have pretty still, a good camera setup on here. It's a 12 megapixel standard and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. It's using 4K 60 on the front and back. With a 10 megapixel selfie, you can still get some great shots out of the S10e. Yes, the colors can be a little bit oversaturated sometimes, but other than that, it still takes really good shots to me. So you also have on here, which is kind of the downside, the 3,100 milliamp battery. It's a little bit small, honestly. You can get 4 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time with this phone, just like regular use. But if you kind of use it lighter, you can maybe squeeze 5, but usually around 4 or something. So this phone does have wireless charging and reverse wireless charging as well too. It just got all the bells and whistles to it. The NFC desktop support on here. It's just a phenomenal little flagship phone still. Now last is going to be the Galaxy A12. This is still a very decent little phone. It's super cheap. It's like around 150 bucks. And I really liked it when I first had it. I did not have any complaints. They're mostly selling these phones on like prepaid carriers like Boost Mobile, Metro, Walmart, stuff like that. So it's got a classy design. I thought the design looked pretty nice considering the price. It's got a big 6.5 inch display at 720p plus. nothing super impressive. It's PLS, but it's I think it's enough for most people. You do have Android 11 on here, the Helio P35, and it's not a phone that you would be doing gaming and stuff on. It's really just for more basic casual use. It does have micro SD card support, 32 gigs of internal storage, and 2 gigs of RAM. You also have a headphone jack on here, fingerprint scanner side mounted. It actually has a massive 5,000 milliamp battery on here, so battery life is just awesome. And then it actually has a still pretty good camera setup: 48 megapixel standard, 5 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro in depth sensor, shoots in 1080p front and back, and an 8 megapixel selfie cam. So you can get some pretty good shots out of the A12 for sure in good lighting. Overall, just a great phone to pick up on a prepaid carrier. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.